Hi class, this is Mr. Clancy, and I wanted to share with you a few thoughts on biodiversity in this video. We're going to be talking about the significance of biodiversity. Is biodiversity diminishing in our environment today? If it is, why is it diminishing? What's the impact? How does that affect you? How does that affect me? How does it impact the current environmental situation as well as the future? But before we do that, I just wanted to take a few minutes and define some terms for you. The first one is basically the definition of biodiversity. And I took the liberty of just writing down some notes. You can just write these down as we go through. I find this keeps me a little more, kind of streamlines the video a little bit if I make the notes ahead of time. But basically, in terms of my thoughts, I would define biodiversity as the heterogeneity of a community. In other words, the different, a variety. A heterogeneous sample is a sample of a lot of different types of something, different individuals, different types of paper, whatever it is. And a heterogeneity of community, so in other words, the number and variety of species in a given area. And the population, another term I'd like to define, population is a species occupying a given area at a given time. So it's basically how many individuals of that species are in that ecosystem at a particular time. The third definition I'd like to share with you is one called community, which is basically the sum of the populations. So the populations would be the number of the individuals of the same species. These are all the different species added in. So this could be the individuals of certain plant species, of certain animal species. The community, the biotic community, would be the sum of all the populations interacting in a given area at a given time. That's important. So that would be a community. By the way, we could be looking at these on a small level, or I'll just put micro or macro level. So I could be looking at the population of Wheaton Academy. I could be looking at the population, for example, might be the freshman class. The community, it's going to depend on how I'm referring. The community of Wheaton Academy might be the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. All right, so all the populations interacting at our campus at a given time. Then there's a couple of different terms here, and see if these make sense. We'll be talking about these in class a little bit too. But basically, species diversity, all right, kind of stemming off from biodiversity above. Species diversity is really defined by a combination of species richness and species evenness. Now, these might be some new terms, so I'll explain these, and then I'll have a chance to show you an example. So I think it'll really make this a little, hopefully very lucid for you. But basically, you're looking at species richness and species evenness. So species richness would be the total number of species present in the community. All right, that's the total number of just different species. Now, species evenness, on the other hand, would be the relative distribution of individuals among the species present in a community. So evenness, if you will be contrasted or be the opposite of dominance. So you're not going to have a dominant species. It would be more evenness. In other words, all the numbers of individuals in different species are about the same. All right? And basically, so evenness contrasts with dominance, and evenness is maximized when all species present have the same number of individuals. So here's an example for this, and see if this makes sense. I'm going to show you two communities here, community A and community B, and I just created this thing about, we're looking at communities of ants, all right? Maybe not very pleasant, but let's look at communities of ants. I think it'll be here for you. All right. Community A, I'm going to say, has three species. I'm going to say they both have three different types of species of ants. Community A has 1,000 ants of one species, and then each of the other two species have 100 ants each, 1,200. All right. Community B has each of the three species present of ants that community A has, but the numbers are different. the total number is still 1,200 ants. All right, in the community, but instead of 1,100 and 100 to make up the 12, there's 400 ants of each species. So 3 times 400 would be the 1,200 there. You can see that this is a much more even number of ants in between or amongst, if you will, each of the species. So communities have this. These communities both have the same species richness. So there will be 3. That's something you should know for our quiz. I may give you an example of a community and say, what's the species richness of this community? You would just add up, all right, the number of different species. All right, that's all there is to it. So there'll be 3 species of the ants here. Community B has greater evenness, all right, because there's 400 of each type versus 1,100 of each one here. And then basically, just to sum this up, as species richness and species evenness increase, the measure of biodiversity increases. So that's some basic background of biodiversity. This week in class, we will talk. We've got a diversity lab which we'll be doing, which is kind of cool. Actually, it's more of an activity as opposed to a lab. We'll be working on that with our eco columns as well, and hopefully give you a good idea about. The key on this is not just to understand these terms, but to understand the significance of what happens when biodiversity goes down. How does that impact you? How does it impact me? Is there something we can do to reverse the decline that we're seeing in our society and our environmental climate in biodiversity? So, look forward to seeing you. Make sure you watch this on your, this is just a short video. Make sure you watch this on your off-campus learning day. Thank you very much.